It's a very great pleasure to welcome you to this third online interactive members-only professional conversation organized by White Report on our new global networking platform, MediaSpace.
So this is good to see that world leaders, and especially the G20 leaders, and the one which took place now in Riyadh this on 21st and 22nd of November, had put a spotlight on digital economy and international taxation. We have a huge amount of benefit that comes from the digital world, but at the same time, there are many challenges that are emerging, and we need to rethink things that we hadn't thought of before and try and tackle them. The gulf is widening hugely. One, there's a growth, but most of the growth is coming because of the platform economy, because of platforms. And you're seeing that even in COVID time, although there was a dip and decline in traditional media, the platforms continue to show a positive trend upwards. And that's unique and very interesting and important to note that our world has changed significantly, especially when it comes to the traditional media.
I suppose the main thing for me now is, and it follows on from Mohammed's excellent presentation, is that regulation to restore balance is inevitable. And so some countries have decided not to bother, most notably the US.
In terms of tax, there's clearly, as was touched on in the introduction, a massive discrepancy in terms of how the highly digitalized businesses and the more traditional businesses are taxed, and therefore the effective tax rate, when you take a global view of these businesses, is quite starkly different. Now, you can argue about the level of difference, but I think everyone recognizes that there is a disparity there.
When we look at, where our burning issue is, and this is where also the IAA comes in, we truly believe that if brands are the engine for economic revival, the shift to direct to consumer is really the future. That's the gateway to 2021. And that is where marketers and brands today have to acquire new skills. They have to master new tools that are out there. And at the same time, to Mohammed's point, they have to take into consideration all these other issues that are out there. And how do you become competent in all these areas? And so I think in the end of the day, it's the brands and the manufacturers who are going to have to take responsibility for a lot of what the change that's going to be essential to our world going forward.
Capital is borderless. Note that labor by and large is not. Tax regimes are largely national, but the framework for taxing multinational companies set by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has been unfit for purpose for many decades, and is increasingly harming market quality, which should affect, which affects market competition as well.
What's really been burning for me for the last 12 or so years is the complete destruction of the business model of my business, journalism, essentially by the domination of digital advertising by two companies. This duopoly.
The solution lies with what's called unitary taxation, where you treat a multinational company, whether it's digital or otherwise, as a single entity globally. Recognize it's a single company. You can ignore the proliferation of all those subsidiaries they set up in the dodgy tax havens. You can look at just where their sales take place. We know exactly where their sales takes place. They know where their sales take place. And you can then apportion their global profits on the basis of sales.
In terms of getting to a solution, it might not be John's utopian solution that is, the perfect answer. Not that we shouldn't aspire for something that's close to that. But I think the mess that is being created in terms of having all individual jurisdictions at the moment, especially in Europe, but also the impact that will have in the States and elsewhere, having all these different taxes, it's not ideal for these global organizations to have a myriad of tax reporting, a myriad of taxes applied to their revenue in particular, not their profits, but their actual revenue. And I would agree that these large companies do have a way of actually working out where their users are, what the value those users are bringing to those companies, whether you've got online marketplaces or social media platforms, whatever the digital format is. I think there is a way to do it.
Either you make the big leap, or you are going to introduce more complexity and more fragmentation into the global system.
I'd like to focus on this timing issue because, as you could see from this growing competition gap that Mohammed presented from our evidence, it's pretty frightening how the gap is growing, and obviously it increases the differences between the opportunities investing in innovation, digital transformation, and so on. And while taxation looks like a penalty for those companies who do it differently, obviously it might help governments to reinvest it into digital transformation or support or anything like that. So I think this whole taxation and competition issue is just one whole complex system.
It took me a big change last couple of years doing some work with the American macroeconomist Jason Furman to move from we need faster prosecutions, sort of Matt's dollar, who I'm a big fan of, to we need something complementary to prosecutions, something ex ante, something not just to catch up with the imbalances, but to actually get ahead of the imbalances.
A big part of the solution is the brands and the manufacturers and government actually coming together to collaborating on finding the solutions to the issues that we're facing, especially with the big platforms. That said, the brands themselves, have suffered deeply this past year in particular, and hopefully we'll come out of this cycle. But they really are the drivers of the economy. They provide jobs.
As a different platform from the current one, hopefully we will be as big as they are one day, but with very different rules. We are very grateful for you to share your thoughts how to rethink this whole very complex ecosystem that's strongly hit this year, but most of us, I think, is very positive that together we can rethink the frameworks quickly and effectively, and we will use lots of innovations, not only the media space ones, but those ones which we didn't speak about this time. So please keep in touch, contact each other at the platform.